In the darkest water on Earth, something ancient is stirring.
Now, deep-sea explorers have just breached the darkness of the Antarctic shelf to find monsters where none should exist.
The deep ocean is the closest we will ever get to visiting another planet.
Deep-sea explorers have just breached the darkness of the Antarctic shelf to find monsters where none should exist.
Deep in the Norwegian fjords and the midnight zone, a creature exists that defies every biological norm. It's blood-red, light-sensitive, and possesses a hunting strategy that seems more predatory and extraterrestrial than jellyfish. For years, the Periphylla was a mystery of the deep. But now that we've solved its secrets, the reality is more unsettling than any science fiction movie. The red menace of the midnight zone. Deep under the rolling waves of the ocean, there is a massive space called the midnight zone, where the sun can never reach. This place is cold, and the water pushes down with a weight that would crush a car. Yet this is exactly where the helmet jellyfish feels right at home. Unlike the clear, wobbly blobs you might see at the beach, this creature looks like a dark red bell or a sturdy knight's helmet floating in the void. Its body is not soft and squishy, but feels more like a piece of tough, flexible plastic or heavy leather. The most fascinating thing about it is that deep, dark red color that looks almost like black ink in the dim light. You might think being bright red would make it easy to spot, but the physics of the deep sea actually turn this into a perfect disappearing act. Since red light is the very first color to get soaked up by the water as you go down, being a red jellyfish in the deep means you are effectively invisible. To any little fish or shrimp swimming nearby, the helmet jellyfish is just a patch of empty black water until it is far too late to run away. The way this animal is built is also quite strange compared to its cousins. It has these long, stiff tentacles that do not just drag behind it like ribbons. Instead, it holds them out like a crown of thorns or a set of spikes. These tentacles are loaded with tiny cells that act like pressurized harpoons, ready to fire at the slightest touch. It does not have a brain or a heart, but it has a web of nerves that allows it to react to vibrations in the water with incredible speed. It is a biological machine that has stayed the same for millions of years because it is already a master of its craft. For a long time, these red ghosts stayed hidden in the deepest parts of the open sea, and humans only saw them once in a long while when a net went down too far. We used to think they were just rare loners of the abyss that preferred to stay away from the rest of the world. But that belief was completely shattered when they suddenly started appearing in massive, terrifying numbers in a place where they were never supposed to thrive. The Great Fjord Invasion. Imagine, for a minute, a deep blue arm of the sea in Norway called a fjord. These places are famous for being calm, beautiful, and full of tasty fish like cod and herring that locals have caught for hundreds of years. But something started to change in a spot called Trondheim Fjord. It was as if a light switch flipped, and the underwater world turned upside down. Normally, the top layers of the ocean are full of life that likes the sun, while the weird stuff stays far below. But these fjords have a very special shape. They are like deep underwater bowls with a shallow lip at the entrance. This shape traps cold, dark water inside, creating a perfect little pocket of the midnight zone right next to the shore. The helmet jellyfish found this out and decided to move in by the millions. When scientists first sent cameras down into these waters, they were shocked by what they saw. It was not just a few jellyfish here and there, but a thick, pulsing wall of red. The water was so packed with these helmet-shaped hunters that you could hardly see through them. They were everywhere, from the deep bottom all the way up toward the surface. This was not a slow move either, but more like a total takeover. In most parts of the ocean, fish are the kings. They eat the small bugs in the water and grow big, and then bigger fish eat them. But the helmet jellyfish hit this system like a wrecking ball. They started eating all the tiny floating animals that the baby fish needed to survive. Because the jellyfish were so numerous and so hungry, they basically starved out the local fish. The shimmering schools of herring and the big meaty cod started to disappear. They could not compete with a creature that does not need much oxygen and can wait forever for a meal to bump into its stinging arms. The local fishermen started pulling up their nets only to find them filled with thousands of pounds of red slime instead of fish. The weight of all those jellyfish was so heavy, it would sometimes tear the expensive nets apart. It was a disaster for the people who lived there, but for the jellyfish, it was a paradise. The scariest part is that once these jellyfish move into a fjord, they do not seem to leave. They create a new kind of environment that scientists call a desert of jelly. Even though there is a lot of life there, it is all the same kind of life, and nothing else can get a foothold. The water stays dark and calm, filled only with the rhythmic pulsing of those leathery red helmets. If there's one thing that this invasion proved, it's that these creatures are more than just shy residents of the deep sea. It is obvious that they are aggressive survivors that can flip an entire ecosystem on its head in a very short amount of time. A nervous system without a brain. When you look at a creature that can take over an entire coastline and wipe out billions of fish, you probably expect it to have a powerful brain or something. But the helmet jellyfish is one of the most successful hunters on Earth precisely because it does not have a brain at all. It does not think about what it is doing, and it does not have a memory of yesterday or a plan for tomorrow. Instead of a central command center like the one in your head, this red jelly uses something called a nerve net. Imagine a massive, invisible spider web that is woven through every single inch of its body. This web of nerves is always turned on and always listening to the water around it. It is a system that is built for one thing and one thing only: lightning-fast reaction. The helmet jellyfish is incredibly sensitive to the world around it. It can feel the tiniest ripple in the water from a shrimp kicking its legs several feet away. Because its nerves are spread out everywhere, the message does not have to travel all the way to a brain and back again to tell the body what to do. If a tentacle feels a touch, it reacts instantly. This makes the jellyfish like a living landmine. It just sits there in the dark, perfectly still, waiting for something to bump into it. The moment a piece of prey touches a stinging cell, the nerve net sends a signal that fires off a tiny, venomous harpoon. This happens in a fraction of a second, which is much faster than any fish can swim away. Even though it lacks a brain, it has special organs called prophylla, located around the edge of its helmet. These are like little sensory hubs that help the jellyfish figure out which way is up or down. They also have simple light-sensing spots that can tell if there is even a tiny bit of sun leaking down from the surface. The nerve net takes the information from these sensors and automatically tells the muscles to pulse, pushing the jellyfish deeper into the dark. It is all done through pure reflex, like how your leg kicks when a doctor taps your knee. This decentralized way of living is actually a huge advantage. If a fish loses its head, it dies instantly. If a helmet jellyfish loses a chunk of its body, or a few tentacles, it does not really care. The rest of the nerve net just keeps on working. It can heal itself and keep right on hunting, because there is no single point of failure. It is a very simple design, but it has worked for hundreds of millions of years. The trophic dead end. When people talk about the ocean, they usually describe a beautiful cycle where everything has a purpose. Tiny plants turn sunlight into energy. Small bugs eat the plants. Fish eat the bugs, and bigger fish eat the smaller ones. Eventually, even the biggest whales die and sink to the bottom to feed the crabs and worms. This is called the food chain, and it is how the ocean stays healthy and full of life. But when the helmet jellyfish moves in, it acts like a giant biological wall that stops the food chain in its tracks. Scientists call this a trophic dead end, and it is the main reason why the rise of these red jellies is such a disaster for the planet. The problem starts with what the helmet jellyfish eats. It has a massive appetite for tiny crustaceans called copepods. These little bugs are the fuel that runs the entire ocean. They are packed with healthy fats and proteins that baby fish need to grow big and strong. But because there are millions of jellyfish in the fjords and the deep sea, they vacuum up all the copepods before the fish even have a chance to find them. Now, you might think that if there are millions of jellyfish, something else would just start eating them. In a normal world, a huge explosion of life would be followed by a huge explosion of predators. But the helmet jellyfish is a very bad meal. Its body is mostly water and a tough, leathery material that has almost no nutritional value. It is like trying to eat a piece of wet cardboard that is also covered in stinging needles. Most fish know better than to try and bite a helmet jellyfish. Even if they did, they wouldn't get much energy from it. Because nothing wants to eat them, the energy that the jellyfish took from the copepods stays locked inside their red bodies. It doesn't move up the food chain at all, and hence, of little or no value to the planet. Maybe then, it is a good thing they have a weakness that can prove quite deadly when they're exposed to it. And that weakness is one that is readily available: the light that kills. Most of us think of the sun as the source of all life, but for the helmet jellyfish, it is a deadly weapon. This is the big mystery that scientists finally solved, and the answer is both cool and a little bit sad if you think about it. It turns out that the very thing that makes them such great hunters is also their greatest weakness. The red pigment in their skin is called porphyrin, and it is a chemical that reacts in a very violent way when it is hit by light. When a normal animal goes out in the sun, it might get a tan or a sunburn if it stays out too long. But when a helmet jellyfish is exposed to even a small amount of sunlight, the porphyrin in its body starts a massive chemical chain reaction. The light hits the red cells and causes them to release a burst of toxic oxygen molecules. These molecules are like tiny little grenades going off inside the jellyfish's own skin. They rip through the cells, tearing the tissue apart from the inside out. In just a few minutes, a healthy, pulsing jellyfish can turn into a melting, white blob of goo. This is why you never see them at the surface during the day unless they are already dying. Because of this allergy to light, the helmet jellyfish has to live a very strict life. They spend their entire existence playing a giant game of hide-and-seek with the sun. During the day, they dive down deep into the darkest parts of the fjord or the open ocean where the sun can't reach them. They huddle in the freezing cold and the crushing pressure just to stay safe. But as soon as the sun goes down, they start a massive journey upward toward the surface to find food. This process is what scientists call vertical migration, and the jellyfish have to be incredibly careful while doing it. If they stay up too late and the sun starts to peek over the horizon, they are in big trouble. Scientists have found that even the artificial lights from a big ship or a pier can be enough to hurt them. This creates a very strange situation in the Norwegian fjords. Because the water is so deep and the mountains are so tall, the shadows are very long. This gives the jellyfish more time to hunt and more places to hide. It is the perfect vampire habitat. They thrive in the shadows, waiting for the cover of night to strike. This lethal relationship with light is the only thing that keeps them from taking over the entire ocean. If they could handle the sun, there would be nowhere for the fish to hide. But even with this weakness, they have found a way to turn the dark into their own private hunting ground. And when they do decide to attack, they don't just swim around and hope for the best. They use a very specific, almost robotic set of moves that makes them one of the most efficient killers in the sea: the alien hunt. When a Periphylla decides it is time to eat, it does not chase its food at all, like most sea creatures would. Instead, it uses a very strange and clever move that scientists call the sit-and-wait predation. The jellyfish moves into a patch of water and then just stops. It hangs there in the dark, perfectly still, like a ghostly red balloon. But while it looks like it is doing nothing, it is actually setting a deadly perimeter around its body. Instead of letting its tentacles dangle down below it like most other jellyfish do, the helmet jellyfish holds them upward and outward. It looks like an umbrella that has been blown inside out by the wind. These tentacles are stiff and strong, and they spread out in a wide circle to cover as much space as possible. This creates a giant sting zone in the water. Because the jellyfish is invisible in the dark, a tiny shrimp or a small fish has no idea it is swimming straight into a wall of needles. The moment the prey bumps into just one of those stiff arms, the jellyfish does not have to think. Its nerve net takes over, and the trap snaps shut. The stinging cells on those tentacles are some of the most advanced weapons in nature. They are like tiny, spring-loaded harpoons that are under a huge amount of pressure. When they are triggered by a touch, they explode outward and sink into the skin of the prey, pumping in a powerful venom that stops the animal from moving almost instantly. Once the prey is stuck and cannot fight back, the jellyfish uses its muscles to pull the tentacle toward its mouth, which is located on the underside of the red helmet. It is a very clean and fast way to get a meal without wasting any energy on a long chase. The bioluminescent trap. It seems crazy that a creature killed by the sun would ever want to light up, but the Periphylla has a very special reason for glowing in the dark. Its glow is a sharp, cold blue flash that flickers through the deep water like a strobe light. Scientists call this bioluminescence, and for a long time, they were confused about why a shy deep-sea hunter would want to announce its location to everyone in the neighborhood. After all, if you are supposed to be an invisible red ghost, turning on a blue light seems like a really bad move. But the mystery was solved when researchers realized the jellyfish is actually using the light as a high-tech security system. They call this the burglar alarm theory. Imagine a small shrimp is swimming through the dark and accidentally bumps into one of the jellyfish's stinging tentacles. The jellyfish immediately lets out a bright burst of blue light. This light is meant to attract something much bigger and much scarier than a shrimp. By flashing its lights, the jellyfish is basically screaming for help. It wants a big fish or a squid to see the light from far away and come over to investigate. When the big predator arrives, it usually ignores the jelly and eats whatever was bothering it in the first place. The blue light is also a warning to anything that might want to take a bite out of the jellyfish itself. Since the blue color travels very far in the deep ocean, any predator nearby will see the flash and know that a stinging helmet jellyfish is right there. Most smart hunters have learned that a blue flash means a painful mouth full of stingers and very little food to show for it. It is a keep away sign that works even in the total blackness of the midnight zone. This blue glow is also very different from the red pigment that kills the jellyfish in the sun. The blue light is created by a chemical reaction inside special cells, and it does not hurt the jellyfish at all. It is a controlled burst that lasts only a few seconds. When you see thousands of these jellies pulsing and flashing at the same time in a Norwegian fjord, it looks like a city of stars underwater. It is beautiful, but it is also a reminder of how dangerous these waters have become. The global expansion mystery. The Periphylla was once thought to be a rare resident of the deepest parts of the Atlantic, but scientists are now finding them in places that don't make any sense. These red invaders are spreading across the globe, and they are moving into territories we never expected. For a long time, the only place people really worried about them was in those dark Norwegian fjords. But now, they are popping up in the Mediterranean Sea and even pushing further north into the high Arctic. It is a massive expansion that is changing the map of the ocean. One of the biggest mysteries is how a creature that is killed by sunlight can travel across thousands of miles of open water to reach new homes. Part of the answer can be found in the deep, warm currents of the Atlantic Ocean. These underwater rivers act like a giant conveyor belt, carrying the jellyfish into new regions while they stay safely hidden in the dark, deep layers. Because they can survive for a long time without much food and handle very low oxygen levels, they are like the ultimate hitchhikers. They just drift along until they find a new spot that feels like home. But as is the case most times, the human touch is not lost in this tale. We are accidentally helping them move. How, you might ask? Well, large ships take on huge amounts of water, called ballast water, to stay stable in the ocean. When they suck up this water in one part of the world, they often grab tiny microscopic jellyfish larvae or eggs without even knowing it. When they reach their destination and dump that water out, they release a fresh batch of these so-called aliens into a brand new ecosystem. This has helped them spread into the Mediterranean, where they are now starting to compete with local fish for food. We could also blame climate change for this strategic takeover. As the world warms up, the ice in the Arctic is melting, and the water is changing. In some places, the water is becoming darker and cloudier because of more sediment and runoff from the land. For a creature that loves the dark, this is like an open invitation. The jellyfish are now moving into Arctic fjords, where it was once too bright or too cold for them to survive. They are following the shadows as they spread farther and farther from their original home. This global expansion is a warning sign when we look at it deeply. The fact is, these jellyfish are no longer just a local problem for Norway. We have established that they are world-class survivors that know how to take advantage of a changing planet. But as they move into these new areas, they are bringing their dead-end lifestyle with them, which is very bad news for the animals that were there first. The impact on humanity. It is easy to think of a jellyfish as just a weird blob in the ocean that has nothing to do with our lives on land. But the helmet jellyfish is proving that a change deep in the water can hit our world like a ton of bricks. For the people who live along the coasts where these jellies have taken over, this alien invasion is a huge financial disaster. The biggest and most obvious hit is to the fishing industry. In places like the Trondheim's fjord, fishermen go out expecting to catch high-value fish like cod or herring, but instead, they pull up nets that are overflowing with thousands of pounds of red jellyfish. These jellies are so heavy that they can actually snap the cables or tear the expensive nets to pieces. Even if the nets hold together, the fish inside are often ruined. Because the helmet jellyfish is covered in powerful stinging cells, any fish trapped with them gets burned by the venom. This leaves the fish covered in marks and slime, making them impossible to sell at the market. It is not just the lost fish that hurts. It is the extra work that comes with the whole ordeal. A fisherman might spend hours just picking individual jellyfish out of their gear, only to have to do it all over again on the next haul. This has pushed some small-scale fishermen to give up entirely. They simply cannot afford the fuel to travel further away, or the cost of constantly fixing their gear. In a way, the jellyfish are winning a war of exhaustion against the people who have worked these waters for generations. Beyond fishing, these drifting armies are also a major threat to our energy and water. Many power plants and factories sit on the coast because they need to suck in millions of gallons of seawater every minute to stay cool. When a massive bloom of helmet jellyfish drifts into those intake pipes, it is like shoving a giant sponge into a vacuum cleaner. The soft bodies of the jellies get pressed together into a thick waterproof mat that completely blocks the flow of water. This can force a multi-billion-dollar power plant to shut down in just a few minutes to prevent the engines from melting down. From Japan to Scotland, these unthinking red blobs have caused massive blackouts and cost millions of dollars in repairs. The impact is quite real, and it is growing. As we change the ocean, we are creating a world that is perfect for them and very difficult for us. But while we struggle to keep our nets clean and our lights on, scientists are desperately trying to figure out if there is any way to fight back against this red tide. Can we stop the bloom? Since we now know that these red invaders are essentially biological dead ends, the big question is, can we stop them? You might think the easiest solution is to simply go out and catch them all. If they are clogging the nets anyway, why not just scoop them up and get rid of them? But this is where the mystery takes its most frustrating turn. Scientists have found that trying to kill our way out of a jellyfish bloom often makes the problem much worse. This is because of a strange survival trick called stress-induced spawning. When a helmet jellyfish feels like its life is in danger, whether it is being pulled into a boat or caught in a net, It has a built-in panic button. In a last-ditch effort to keep its kind alive, the jellyfish will release all its eggs and sperm into the water at once. A single stressed-out jelly can release thousands of tiny potential offspring in its final moments. So, by trying to clear a fjord of 1 million jellyfish, humans might accidentally be planting the seeds for 10 million more. It is like a hydra from the old myths. You cut off one head and 2 more grow back in its place. There have also been talks about introducing natural predators. In the open ocean, some sea turtles and giant sunfish love to snack on jellies. But the Norwegian fjords are too cold and too enclosed for these big travelers to stay for long. Without a natural policeman to keep the population in check, the helmet jellyfish has a free pass to do whatever it wants. Some researchers are looking into using specialized underwater robots to track and study the blooms, hoping to find a silver bullet like a specific parasite or a natural disease that only targets the red jellies. But so far, nothing has worked on a large scale. The truth is that the only real way to stop this bad news is to fix the environment that allowed them to take over in the first place. This means tackling overfishing so that rival fish can compete for food again, and slowing down the warming of the oceans that gives these deep-sea aliens a comfortable home in shallow waters. It is a slow, difficult process that requires the whole world to work together. Until then, the red ghosts of the abyss are likely here to stay, pulsing in the dark and waiting for their next chance to expand. What are your thoughts? Do you think these red aliens are eventually going to replace all the fish we know and love? Leave your answers in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoy this video, please click on the next one on your screen.